Our episode today begins in the city of Omoi, where enormous orcs, towering giants, and skeletal creatures approach the castle gates. The brave warriors defending the city are exhausted, unable to withstand the overwhelming numbers much longer. So the leader with the upturned mustache urges them to hold their ground, regardless of the outcome, reminding them that every adventurer is duty-bound to protect the city. If we can get help from the new adventurers, he adds, referring to Haruka and his group, we'll have everything we need to defeat these monsters. We must attack with all we've got. This is no time to surrender. Standing at the main gate, he orders the defenders, don't let a single one of them pass. The scene shifts to Haruka and his team, deep underground, surrounded by falling flames. So Haruka reassures everyone that they'll make it out safely. Meanwhile, the others resolve to do their best to reach the surface as quickly as possible. Hurry, Haruka, they urge him. The fate of Omoi depends on you. Motivated, Haruka declares, all right, it's time to move. He and his group, currently on the 73rd floor, face reptilian creatures. Haruka uses his ice powers to freeze them, while the masked man wields his sword to destroy them. For the insects, they deploy heavy smoke to eliminate them. Then they encounter a massive two-headed red dog. Haruka throws a smoke bomb, allowing the masked man to charge forward and slice the beast in half, causing a massive explosion. Amidst the wreckage, they discover valuable loot, gloves that enhance physical and magical attacks with the left hand and physical and magical defense with the right, a magical key, a trap-detecting ring, and an item that disables automatic traps. Sir Haruka laments, but I still haven't found the pheromone ring I've been searching for. As they gather the treasures, Haruka mentions wanting to test something once they return to the city. The masked man nudges him, signaling for a rest, but Haruka insists, I know I'm pushing myself, but I can't stop now. So the group reaches a new area, the 69th floor, only to encounter the sleep owl. This creature's power causes anyone it attacks to fall asleep instantly. Within moments, Haruka collapses into a deep slumber, leaving the masked man unaffected. He carries Haruka and continues onward. When Haruka he thanks the masked man for his help. The scene shifts again to another dungeon, where Tuka and her group face a fearsome sphinx. Its overwhelming size and strength terrify them. Harumi charges at it, landing a few strikes on its leg, but the wounds heal instantly. Shocked, he mutters, that means my attacks won't work. Another member casts powerful magic, causing a minor scratch, but it heals just as quickly. The group realizes that brute force won't suffice, they'll need to solve puzzles to escape. Sphinx unleashes its destructive power, landing a devastating blow. Meanwhile, Haruka and Angelica are seen together, with Haruka thanking her profusely, saying he feels much better now. However, he is stunned by the depth of the chasm they are traversing. He warns, we can't predict when this floor might collapse, so we must tread carefully. The scene shifts again to Haruka's friends. Exhausted and sitting on the ground, they are consumed by despair, convinced they can no longer continue fighting. Hiromi uses his power to strike the monster, but it has no effect. The monster then attempts to attack Tuka, but Haruka arrives just in time to save her. He is seen flying through the air thanks to his contradiction gloves, which he fused with his regular gloves. So these gloves negate both physical and magical attacks. Haruka strikes the monster in the back with his sword, giving Angelica the opportunity to finish it off by decapitating it. After defeating the monster, Tuka speaks to Haruka, expressing her happiness at his return. Everyone present is overjoyed to have him back. As they prepare to leave, Tuka asks about the identity of the masked knight. Before Haruka can answer, he slips and falls from the floor they are on, but his friends quickly catch him before anything happens. Shirkoka suggests celebrating their recent events, but Tatsuya reminds him that it's not the time to celebrate, as there are still many monsters waiting for them. And everyone is shocked by what they see. If all these monsters attack Omoi, the city is doomed. No one knows what to do or how to deal with this overwhelming number of creatures. Tuka speaks to Haruka, reminding him that he once mentioned having a way to save the city. Haruka looks at Angelica and says that she is the key to everything. When asked again about Angelica, Haruka insists they need to return to Omoi quickly as the city is in grave danger. One of the adventurers mentions heading straight to the rooftop where a teleportation gate is located. So Haruka looks where the adventurer points but sees no gate. The adventurer explains that people don't usually work their way from the bottom to the top. The group quickly heads toward the gate. Along the way, Taka asks Haruka, we managed to defeat such strong monsters. Haruka replies that he doubts he could have done it with conventional methods, but with a little creativity, he has a chance of succeeding in this world. The scene then shifts to the leader and his men standing in the forest, observing the monsters. Haruka and his friends arrive at that moment, and they begin discussing their plans. However, their friend rushes in and urges them to save the conversation for later, as the monsters are heading toward the city. When Haruka and his friends turn to look, they are stunned by the sight. The number of monsters is enormous, shaking the ground as if it were an earthquake. So despite the panic and fear, they are certain that the adventurers of Omoi will defend themselves and their city. In the midst of the chaos, Haruka signals to Angelica, and she immediately understands what he needs from her. Haruka asks Angelica to use her magic, and it turns out to be incredibly powerful, leaving everyone astonished by her strength. Haruka remarks she has put countless strong enemies to rest in the dungeon. Her powers are capable of keeping any monster under control. She holds absolute authority over them all. As the dungeon sovereign, only she has the power to eliminate her monsters. So Angelica indeed manages to kill all the monsters, making them vanish entirely. Everyone is left in awe of what Angelica has done. Haruka approaches her, saying it worked somehow. Toka asks Haruka what happened to the monsters. They've all disappeared. He responds, I didn't do anything. You could say it was all Angelica's doing. There's absolutely no danger from her. We succeeded in leaving the dungeon together, and she saved me many times. Chuya chimes in, but the Dungeon Emperor is supposed to be stronger than the Dungeon King itself, with all the dungeon monsters serving them. Haruka replies, that's the genius in you. You know so much it's almost scary. Then Haruka declares, you are the strongest in the dungeon. That even after a series of circumstances that left you at the first level, you can still defeat any monster in an instant. So I thought with that strength, you would be able to control them. However, it only works on monsters from the same dungeon, and they needed to be close, I believe. Wakina then asks, but what happened to the monsters that disappeared? It's not like they were teleported elsewhere. Haruka replies, I bet they'll stay in their home dungeon. I mean, the Dungeon Emperor commanded them to. I'm sure they're behaving well. Haruka thinks to himself, I'm glad Angelica made it out safely. So scene shifts to the city of Omoi, where Haruka says, the city of Omoi should enjoy peace for some time now. It's time to start the event I thought of in the dungeon. Haruka's friend asks him, what are you doing now? He replies, I'm using the items I got from the dungeon to organize an event. Toka, Haruka insists, Haruka, I brought everyone as you requested. They all look at the items in astonishment, saying it's like a literal mountain of treasure. All this gear is so rare. Haruka addresses them, who's ready to shop. All the prices are incredibly low, don't miss out. I can barely contain myself. The boys exclaim, we can't let the girls beat us. Haruka announces the dungeon battle sale begins. And before I forget, I'll be charging you for these items. The girls and boys rush to compete for the swords, shields, and everything else available. Haruka thinks to himself, they're all obsessed. This whole thing for sale turns the girls into monsters. Out here bloodthirsty. Don't give up, guys. When the boys are worn out, Haruka says, I suppose I can let them access the items I was keeping in reserve. The boys rush to him, wanting to take everything he has, but Haruka tells them, I'm not part of the sale. Watching them, Haruka smiles and says, this should help keep everyone safe. The only thing worrying me now is Angelica. She stayed with us in the city for the time being, but she was alone in that dungeon for so long. I'm not the talkative type, but I suspect she isn't very social either. And that concludes today's episode of this anime. Stay tuned for the next episodes. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you never miss anything new.